What I'm about to say is not going to be popular with some of you. However, what I'm about to say must be said. Recently, there's been an event in Liverpool that has drawn great interest from people in our circles. Of course, I'm talking about the protest that got violent or led to a police car being burnt out in Liverpool. It's important to note that this kind of action was inspired by a migrant who was being housed at a hotel where the protest or riot, whichever term you prefer, occurred, was propositioning a 15-year-old for sex. And as a result, the community came together, started protesting, and it led to some violence and the protests getting out of control. This kind of action and behaviour cannot happen. It is a net negative, but it's not just a net negative, it makes the whole sensible centre look bad. And it's very important and very disappointing that lots of people on the sensible centre are not just staying quiet about this, but not necessarily endorsing it either, but saying that it's a good thing, which it clearly is not. I think it's stupid to suggest that it's a good thing, that a riot outside of a hotel is going to change anything about the government's immigration policy. And in my opinion, it's a very bad thing to happen because it makes it harder for quality people who have useful political, legal skills and media skills to operate, because it makes it easier for left-wing NGOs to advise the government and the police that anybody who is openly sensibly centrist or anybody who is openly hostile to immigration is a risk of terrorism. The problem I've got with this kind of action is it makes it harder for useful political actors or useful political action to occur. So, in terms of useful political actors, what can happen is, depending on what said person's skill or expertise is, if a group behaves like this, lawyers, doctors, whoever, aren't necessarily going to want to be associated with this group because it can cost you your career. You could get referred to Prevent, and most professional bodies, if you get referred to Prevent or counter-terrorism, you have to talk to them, otherwise you'll get struck off. So when people behave like that, even if there is some justification, it makes it very difficult for people who have legal and political skills and public relations skills to help the cause of ending mass immigration, ending illegal immigration, because when a group of people behave in a way that is illegal, if you are supporting that organisation or can be seen to supporting that group, especially if you're a professional, it can lead to you getting struck off. Also, in terms of political action, it makes it much harder for events to be organised that have an anti-immigration or anti-mass immigration angle to them, because it's easier for a left-wing NGO to say to the police, you should not allow this event to go ahead and you should give the organisers banning orders because look what happened here. And I do appreciate there hasn't been much in the media saying far right, far right, far right, but I don't think that's necessarily relevant, because I think what the media are doing in this case is they're being quiet on it so that it'll disappear into obscurity and into the news cycle, and the government can be advised by left-wing NGOs to be more harsh than they already are on people who are sceptical of immigration. I think that's what's going to happen with this Liverpool thing. It's going to make it a lot harder to be a sensible centrist, because as a sensible centrist, you're already not really allowed to speak in public. any organisational activities that are undertaken by sensible centrists will have attempts to disrupt them, some of which may be successful, some of which may not be. And events like what happened in Liverpool are just going to make it worse. If people in the sensible centre, whether in retaliation to an event or not, behave like hooligans and behave like Antifa, the sensible centre and prominent sensible centrists are going to suffer more state oppression than they already do. For example, anyone organising events may get put on a terrorist watch list as a result of events like Liverpool occurring. So I really think that what happened in Liverpool should not be recognised as in any way a good thing. It's a bad thing. And I do understand that this is hard for a lot of people to hear, but in terms of taking useful political action, a riot just gets in the way. Right, the Shawcross report, or the Shawcross report. This was a report basically saying that the prevent strategy isn't working, and one of the reasons it discusses in the report is prevent mainly focuses on right-wing youth and isn't very effective at dealing with actual hardcore terrorists. So I think the Shawcross report, in my opinion, hasn't been very well received by the government, because independent reports can just be ignored by the government. There's no duty on the government to implement the recommendations of a report or an inquiry. They often do, especially if it's a public inquiry, because public inquiries cost a lot of money. However, the Shawcross report I don't think is going to be interpreted or taken very well by the government. And this is because this week, Suella Braverman, or the Home Office, I don't think it was specifically her, said we are increasing our counter-terrorism efforts and counter-extremism efforts because we want everybody to feel at home here. And what's interesting about this statement from the Home Office is the language they've used makes it fairly apparent that the counter-extremism efforts are going to be aimed at the right, and not just your sort of loony right, but your sensible centre. And I think that should be concerning for a lot of people, because everyone who is involved in events that trouble occurs at, or anyone who is involved in any way in the sensible centre, is potentially going to face some sort of negative attention from either counter-terrorism, counter-extremism, or something like that. So I think it's very important that when events like what happened in Liverpool happen, they are learnt from. For example, one of the things I do is I tutor public speaking, and I've started a video platform on Locals where I tutor public speaking for not a lot of money, £20 a month. And the reason I did that is because people generally on the sensible centre don't necessarily know how to express, we don't want these people here because they're a health and safety concern, because they are likely going to accost young girls, or they're likely going to cause trouble, in a way that is acceptable. Because what I've seen from council meetings and public consultations is people expressing themselves in a way that isn't very effective, and can actually get them into trouble. And I don't want that, because the way British free speech law works is, as a general rule, you can express any opinion legally, provided it isn't grossly offensive. And what will be grossly offensive and what isn't will depend normally on how it's structured, how your ideas are delivered and presented. So if you use very internet language when opposing in the use of a hotel to house migrants, it's likely that could get you into trouble, and furthermore not be very well received. Whereas if you make a reasoned argument explaining that sexual assaults and that type of thing have happened in other areas, and lay out why and make it really clear why housing migrants in your area is a bad idea, you're gonna get further than you would otherwise get if you said, we just don't want these people here, these foreigners, we don't want them here. And the reason is, it's easier for elites, your lawyers, your doctors, to get behind someone making a well-reasoned, well-argued point about why they don't want a makeshift asylum centre being put in their area. But it's not easy when people behave or talk in a way that is distasteful, shall we say. And I know a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this, but it's important that the ideas that we have as sensible centrists are presented as what they are, and sensible ideas. It's not sensible to just move in hundreds of migrants into hotels, because even if a majority of them are lovely people, a significant number of them will have issues, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's cultural issues. For example, some people in migrant hotels may think that approaching and trying to accost a 15-year-old or a 13-year-old girl for sex is acceptable, and that is nothing you can really do about that. So the best thing is, these people shouldn't be here. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you listen to what I've said and consider it, because at the end of the day, if you're a sensible centrist watching this, we all want the same thing. It's just I would disagree about the tactics of how to get there. Thank you very much. Feel free to check out the links below as well.